This video is going to show you how to do a few basic stitches using our embroidery thread and some cardstock. This is just an old file folder. So the first thing I'm going to do, and this is optional, but I'm going to pre-poke some of my holes for the stitches just so you can kind of see where I'm going. And a lot of students prefer to do it this way as they mark out the name for the letters for their name tag. So as you can see, I've got some holes poked, and they were about, I'd say maybe like 6 to 7 millimeters apart. So that would be a good size. We don't want the holes too close together, otherwise we risk ripping our cardboard. And if they're too far apart, then we're gonna have too much thread in between, and we're not, if we do like a round letter, for instance, we're not gonna get a nice smooth curve. So the first stitch I'm gonna show you is just called a running stitch. This is the most basic stitch, and this is kind of the intuitive one when it comes to sewing. I have my single layer of thread with the knot at the back, and the other part of the thread is just hanging loose over here. I'm always going to start from the back side of my paper. And yes, my cat has come to join us again. And the reason for this is because I only want good stuff showing on the right side of my paper. My knot, I want to end up on the back. So that's why I'm going to go up through the back side. So to do the running stitch, all we have to do is go into the paper like that, and it just goes up and down through the paper in a straight line, and you'll see that it just kind of goes like a wave or a snake, just up and down through the paper. Now this is a basic running stitch, and if we did this with fabric, because there's these gaps left in between and it's just a long string that goes in and out of the fabric, it wouldn't be very secure. If we did this for embellishment kind of stitching, you'll notice that it leaves these little spaces here, and that's not always what we want either. For your project, you're going to learn how to do the running stitch, but that's not what you're going to use to actually stitch your letters. You're either going to use a double running stitch or a back stitch, which is what I'm going to show you in the next parts here. So to do the double running stitch, it's very simple. And let's say I'm just kind of stitching in this line here. All I want to do is go forwards with the basic running stitch, not doing anything fancy, just up and down through the page here. And then when I get to the end, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn around and go the other way, back through the same holes that I used. And what this is going to do is basically allow me to fill in those gaps. So it's the same stitch, but we're just going back the way we came, up and down through the fabric or paper, filling in those gaps. So a double running stitch can be nice because it looks good from both sides. The only difference we might see is that on the wrong side, we have our knot, and there might be a space left over because we're not going to want to come back up through here and leave our thread hanging loose on that side. But the double running stitch, you can recognize it because it looks basically the same on both sides. And it's a very simple stitch to do. At this point, if you're done, you can do something called tying off. And all you would have to do is go back into one of your stitches that you previously made and just loop your thread underneath underneath the thread. You don't need to go through the paper, just underneath the thread of any nearby stitch. And I'm gonna pull this, but not all the way through. I'll leave myself a little loop and go back through that loop and then pull this tight. What this does is it creates a knot. I'm essentially just tying a knot with my thread onto that loop, onto that other stitch. I'm gonna do this at least 2 times to create a double knot. I usually do it 3 times just to be extra secure. And then from here, I can cut off my thread.